In the silent depths of an Istanbul dawn in 1623, a story unfolded that would never appear in the lavish imperial chronicles. Some accounts whisper of a heart-rending scream echoing through the marble halls of Topkapi Palace, not from a battlefield, but from the trembling throat of a young girl of royal blood. She was Princess Fatima Sultan, barely 15, daughter of one of the most powerful sovereigns on earth. According to rumour, her cries, a mix of fear and supplication, echoed through the golden corridors like an icy echo that even the eunuchs, guardians hardened to horror, dared not confront. Before we continue, if you enjoy uncovering the hidden truths behind famous personalities, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. Whether fact or legend, storytellers claim this was the hidden price every daughter of a sultan paid upon reaching marriageable age, a price written not in chronicles but in whispers, said to mark their skin and soul. The official histories remain silent, but palace gossip spoke of a ritual that broke the mind before the body, condemning young brides to a shadowed fate. Behind the veils of silk and perfumed gardens lay a truth so sinister that no European princess would have wished it for herself. For centuries, rumours persisted that the empire perfected a marriage protocol so cruel that not even its fiercest enemies would have imposed it on their daughters. Chroniclers never recorded such practices, yet popular imagination insisted that the magnificence of public ceremonies concealed a hidden terror. Only much later, writers claimed to have seen forbidden documents in Istanbul's archives, alleging they revealed what truly happened on the wedding nights of Ottoman princesses. Whether genuine or fabricated, these tales shocked readers, for while peasants and noblewomen alike dreamed of palace life, the imperial heirs were said to face nightmares disguised as grandeur. This, then, is no fairy tale. It is a tale of power and fear, stitched from both history and rumour. Princesses born in marble palaces were not envied by all. Many stories suggest they preferred the cold embrace of the grave to the destiny awaiting them beyond the wedding door. The Ottoman Empire, vast as a borderless ocean, cast its shadow over 3 continents for more than 6 centuries. From its founding in 1299 until its decline in 1922, it became one of the most formidable political and military machines in history. Its armies marched with iron discipline from the walls of Vienna to the scorching sands of Yemen. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 was not just the conquest of a city, but the metamorphosis of the known world. Byzantium vanished, and Istanbul became the beating heart of an empire. At its centre stood the jewel of the sultans, Topkapi Palace. Within its marble walls and fragrant gardens, wars, alliances, and inheritances were decided, but also the private tragedies of those born with royal blood. Behind gates guarded by eunuchs, the imperial harem was a city within a city, once home to more than 800 women. Governed by rigid protocols, it was a world where even a breath could carry consequences. From the 1530s onward, when Suleiman the Magnificent granted his wife, Hurrem, unprecedented titles, the harem ceased to be a simple pleasure ground and became a stage of intrigue, alliances, and silent wars. Most concubines were Christian slaves, captured in campaigns or purchased in distant markets. Torn from their homes, they arrived with a single dream: to win the sultan's gaze and transform their bondage into influence. Their days were filled with music, embroidery, poetry, and rites of obedience. Every gesture could decide their future. Paradoxically, these slaves sometimes had more room for maneuver than the sultan's own daughters. Concubines could rise to positions of power. Imperial princesses, however, were often reduced to pawns in diplomacy, bartered in marriage to secure loyalty or quell rebellion. It was in this setting of grandeur and oppression that the so-called Sultanate of Women arose, spanning 53 to 1656. Figures like Kursum Sultan and Turhan Hatis Sultan wielded real authority, feared even by the Janissaries. Yet while concubines turned queens shaped the fate of the empire, imperial princesses remained bound by a harsher destiny. The brilliance of their lineage was also their chain. They were born to be sacrificed in the name of power. The external splendor, with its golden thrones, banquets, and lavish embassies, concealed a mechanism of submission that few dared speak of openly. At the center of this silence lay the destiny of Fatima Sultan, who would soon transform from a child prodigy into a victim of a ritual whispered about for centuries. In 1606, Fatima Sultan was born, daughter of Sultan Ahmed I, and the formidable Kursem Sultan, one of the most powerful women the empire ever saw. Her childhood unfolded among the fragrant gardens and courtyards of Topkapi, where fountains murmured beside the voices of lutanists and poets. Chroniclers admired her brilliance. She mastered 4 languages, wrote with the precision of a calligrapher, studied astronomy, and even debated law and history with scholars. To poets, she was a jewel of the dynasty, intelligence, beauty, and nobility united in one figure. But in the Ottoman court, neither brilliance nor talent shielded a girl from the fate decided at her birth. Like every daughter of a sultan, Fatima was destined to become a tool of politics, a diplomatic sacrifice. Her name was inscribed, silently but firmly, on the scrolls of imperial strategy. From the moment she was born, it was known she would be given in marriage to seal alliances, secure obedience, or bind a powerful family closer to the throne. The man chosen for her was not a young noble or romantic suitor, but Kara Mustafa Pasha, a battle-hardened commander 20 years her senior. For him, marriage to a sultan's daughter was a path to greater power. For her, it was the beginning of a tragedy. Not even her mother, Kursem Sultan, Shadow Queen and master of intrigue, could protect her from what was to come. Rumors speak of a preparation known as Tervil and Mubarak, described as sacred instruction, but functioning more like a mechanism of submission. Some say it was a unique practice reserved for imperial princesses designed to break their pride before they were handed to their future husbands. According to these accounts, an elderly attendant, Gulnar Hatun, oversaw Fatima's training. The bride's chamber became her classroom. She repeated gestures of reverence, learned precise angles for bowing, and practiced measured steps with her hands held low. Her vocabulary, it was said, was reduced to a limited set of words: gratitude, apology, acceptance, and supplication. Any error, witnesses claimed, brought punishment in the form of fasting or confinement. The most disturbing whispers describe rehearsals for the wedding night. Talim and Herdik carried out in underground chambers with wax figures crafted by Venetian artisans. If these stories are true, Fatima was forced to mimic gestures no adolescent should know, every sign of resistance noted in secret ledgers. Whether fact or cruel exaggeration, such tales spread among later chroniclers, always insisting that no other court in the world subjected its princesses to such rituals. What is known for certain is that her final months before marriage were marked by humiliation. Accounts recall that she was even made to serve her father's concubines, washing them, dressing them, and preparing them for their meetings with the Sultan. Some describe how she wept uncontrollably while adjusting their veils, each act designed to crush her pride before the wedding day arrived. A week before the wedding, Fatima was transferred to the Helling Cuckoo, the bridal pavilion, an isolated compound where every aspect of her life was controlled. From that moment, nothing she ate, drank, or even thought seemed to belong to her anymore. Her diet consisted of pomegranates, honey, goat's milk, almonds, and spiced elixirs. Some claimed these mixtures, prepared by alchemists said to be trained in Cordoba and Samarkand, carried substances meant to calm her spirit and induce docility. Others dismissed them as rumor, but the effect was undeniable. She began to sink into a strange state of resignation. Every sip and every bite carried an invisible reminder. Her body was no longer hers. Bathing, too, became an ordeal. Under the eyes of attendants, she was immersed in waters perfumed with oils of poppy, valerian, and asak. What should have been refreshing was instead a ritual of control, each cleansing framed as purification for her future husband. Witnesses later described it as a sacred act turned invisible chain, water becoming the empire's claim over her very skin. The walls of the pavilion told the same story. Tapestries displayed scenes of obedient wives, celebrated for their fertility and submission, silent models for her to imitate. Venetian mirrors were positioned so she could not escape her own reflection, a practice once rooted in Sufi meditation known as muraqabah, self-observation. Is was twisted into a weapon. Fatima was forced to watch herself constantly, as if even her shadow had become a jailer. Meanwhile, her education shifted from poetry and astronomy to obedience manuals. The Palace Ulema supplied passages from texts such as Nasihat al-Muluk and other treatises, extolling loyalty and sacrifice as sacred duties. Day after day, she recited these verses aloud before concubines and eunuchs. Prayers too were reshaped, no longer personal supplications to God, but formulas glorifying devotion to a husband as divine command. Religion itself became rehearsal for submission. Humiliation was woven into her daily life. Twice a week, she was ordered to serve her father's concubines. The ritual's message was clear. Even her father's mistresses stood above her. The punishments for resistance were harsh. A defiant glance could mean enforced fasting. A sigh of disgust might send her into the damp reflection cells, where silence and darkness broke her further. Any mistake in bowing or prayer meant endless repetition before the female court, until exhaustion erased her will. Records, or perhaps rumors repeated by later storytellers, insist that every detail of her progress was logged as if she were taking an exam. But there were no rewards, only the certainty that training would continue until she was completely reshaped. By this stage, those who knew her said her voice began to fade. She did not merely remain silent from fear, she seemed unable to find words at all. The brilliant young woman who once debated scholars was now little more than a shadow, her identity hollowed out within the pavilion walls. A week before the wedding, her isolation reached its peak. Cut off from all outside sound, Fatima lived under a clockwork routine designed to erase her entirely. Under constant supervision, fed with purifying foods, bathed in sacred oils, surrounded by tapestries of submissive wives and mirrors that turned inward into prisons, she finally understood she was no longer master of her voice, her body, or her dreams. The girl who had once charted the stars had been transformed into a vessel of obedience. The daughter of Ahmed, once known for her intelligence and spirit, or a subdued shadow prepared to endure the most feared night of her life. The appointed day arrived on March 15, 1623. From dawn, Istanbul throbbed with ceremony. The streets filled with processions, incense thick in the air, and music brought from distant provinces. War drums clashed with the strings of the oud, while palace courtyards glittered with banquets served on golden trays. Chroniclers describe Persian dancers and Andalusian musicians animating the halls, while the Janissaries displayed their martial skill before the Sultan's eyes. For the people, it was a spectacle sent to honor the heavens. For Fatima, it was the drumbeat of doom. The palace physicians noticed worrying signs. She drank little, her lips cracked. She trembled and sweated despite the mild spring air. Today, we would call them panic attacks. At the time, they were recorded under the vague diagnosis of virginal melancholy. Guests raised their glasses, music filled the corridors, yet she remained silent, staring at nothing. When the feasts ended and the visitors departed, the most dreaded procession began. The princess was led to the bridal pavilion, an octagonal structure raised in the palace gardens. Officially, it was meant to embody purity, surrender, and union. But in the whispers of eunuchs and attendants, it became something darker. Some swore that the building itself had been arranged to test obedience, each chamber dedicated to a different rite. In truth, Fatima was bathed in rosewater and sandalwood, her body anointed with oils, as was custom. Yet rumors claimed stronger concoctions were used, drops of opium, even mandrake, to dull resistance. She was dressed in white silk, embroidered with gold, her gown heavy with pearls and gems. To outsiders, it was a vision of majesty, but some whispered that the gown's weight and layers made it a prison, forcing her body into stillness. Meanwhile, Kara Mustafa Pasha was kept apart, receiving counsel from elders on how to approach the union. Some accounts insist he was instructed in intimidation, gestures of dominance, as if preparing for a campaign. Whether truth or rumor, the very idea reveals how closely politics and the marriage bed were entwined. At last, the bride was led into the chamber of consummation. The walls bore tapestries of conquests and victories, a reminder that this union was not simply personal, but dynastic. Chroniclers note that attendants remained close by, listening, ensuring that nothing could prevent the act. To them, the union symbolized stability for the empire. For Fatima, it was the beginning of collapse. Witnesses wrote that her voice faltered to a whisper, her body trembling. Some accounts even speak of fainting spells and bleeding, described in coded terms as the soul departing the body. Whether exaggerated or not, the picture is clear. She endured the night in silence, her spirit withdrawing in order to survive. The following days revealed her transformation. Court physicians recorded symptoms we would now call severe trauma: muteness, loss of appetite, sudden crying, and violent fits at the mere presence of men, even trusted eunuchs. Remedies were attempted: herbal infusions, music, Sufi meditations. None restored her former brilliance. The young woman who once debated astronomy with scholars and played music in the gardens became a hushed shadow. Books lay unopened, instruments gathered dust, and her laughter was gone. The marriage continued out of duty. Children were born, ceremonies held, but in private, silence ruled. Later memoirs suggest that even Mustafa Pasha sought refuge in campaigns and opium, haunted by the knowledge that his wedding night had destroyed his wife. He fulfilled his public duties. She appeared at ceremonies as a silent figure, adorned but absent. The years passed without Fatima ever recovering the spark of her youth. Chroniclers noted her voice grew faint, her laugh vanished, and physicians described her as plagued by fevers, fainting spells, and a quickened pulse that worsened each year around the anniversary of her marriage. What began as a night of consummation seemed, in the eyes of some, to have transformed into a lifelong sentence of silence. The daughter of Ahmed I, once celebrated for her brilliance, became a quiet shadow within the palace walls. The empire, which had praised her wedding as a triumph, did not acknowledge the private cost. In public, she was the dutiful wife and mother. She appeared at banquets, rituals, and ceremonies, fulfilling the role imposed on her. But in private, memoirs hint that she suffered sleepless nights and sudden fits of weeping. The splendor of the court, jewels, music, feasts, stood in stark contrast to her inner darkness. Kara Mustafa Pasha, though respected in the military, never erased the distance between himself and his wife. Later writings describe him retreating into long campaigns and opium, perhaps unable to face the shadow he had helped create. Their marriage became mechanical, bound only by politics and duty. Fatima lived for nearly 3 decades after that night. In 1652, palace doctors recorded her death from brain fever, yet some whispered that the date, the exact anniversary of her wedding, was more than coincidence. The story spread that her spirit had been broken long before her body failed, and Fatima was not alone. In the archives, scattered records show that many Ottoman princesses endured similar fates. Some lived in silence, their names barely mentioned after marriage. Others disappeared from official registers altogether. Historians suspect some cases of suicide or madness, though the chronicles replace them with vague euphemisms like illness or withdrawal. Rumours persist of princesses who devised secret embroidery codes to communicate hidden messages to sisters, or who sought permission for divorce, a rare but daring act. One account even suggests that a few faked their own deaths to avoid an unwanted second marriage. Whether fully true or coloured by later imagination, these tales reflect the desperation that life inside the palace could bring. What the empire celebrated as fairy tales of silks and crowns often hid a harsher reality. Ottoman princesses were not only symbols of luxury and privilege, but also pawns in a political game that left them with little control over their own lives. Their voices, muted by protocol, were the first casualties of power. The tragedy of Fatima opens a window onto that uncomfortable truth that dynastic glory was often built upon the suffering of the very women who carried its weight. And then the inevitable question arises: how many such stories remain hidden in the sealed archives of palaces? Ottoman, European, Chinese, Russian. How many princesses lived and died in silence, their names remembered only in coded fragments and court whispers? If the fate of Fatima has unsettled you, join us as we uncover more hidden histories. Share this story, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which queen or princess's destiny you would like brought out of the shadows. Because only by peeling away the silks and the myths can we finally hear the voices of those sacrificed to empire.